I am Matt Barry. That is the coach, Jim Mora, Greg McElroy, Todd McShay, and Emmanuel Acho. We brought so many voices in because we're going to fill 2.5 hours of content talking hardcore college football, bowl games, coaches, etc. You guys have been here all day. Let's do a roll call. You've been here since how long?
9 a.m.
Great. You still look great. McElroy?
I got here at noon.
McShay literally just rolled up on
5 minutes ago.
Yeah, he flew into Bradley Airport. Nacho, how long you been here?
Only since 5 so I'm fresh. I'm juiced right now.
I'm fresh with you. We look forward to breaking down all the fun with you. We've got the college football playoff set. We've got the New Year's 6 bowl game set. We've got everything you're going to want to talk to. Matt Rule's going to join us. Herm Edwards is going to join us. Plenty to discuss as we can finally talk a little college football postseason, starting with the college football playoff and the 2 semifinal games. Not much suspense other than one, LSU leapfrogging Ohio State. LSU will play Oklahoma in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl December 28th. That's the early game, 4 p.m. Eastern. And then you got a good one out in the desert, the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. Ohio State taking on Clemson, 2 versus 3. Ohio State has had issues with Clemson in the past. In fact, they have never beaten the Clemson Tigers in their 3 matchups. So here's how they line up in terms of resume, because this was the big argument going in. We knew who the 4 teams were going to be, just where they were going to be was the debate. If you look at the resumes going forward, FPI rank, you've got Ohio State with the bragging rights at first, Clemson second, LSU third, but strength of record goes to LSU, and they had 5 wins against AP top 10 teams. And so at the end of the day, gentlemen, you could make the argument that we went into a college football playoff Sunday having really 3 number 1 teams that you could argue each one of them. We'll go this way. We're going to try to act a little organized tonight. Coach, I'll start with you. When you look at how 1, 2, 3 ended up shaking out, what were your thoughts?
Well, my initial thought and my thoughts for the last 6 weeks were LSU. About 1 a.m. last night, I said, I got to make a decision here. So I just factored everything in my mind. I said, you know what? I'm going with Ohio State. So I was surprised a little bit this morning when it was LSU, and I'll tell you why. I look at Ohio State, and I see a team that has a scoring differential of 470 points. Okay, they played 7 teams that have winning records. Their opponent's record was 58%. Mm-hmm. They played 9 conference games, okay? They have the number 1 ranked scoring offense and the number 3 ranked scoring defense in the country. I say, well, that's a complete football team, okay? And then I'm thinking, well, LSU, if they get the nod, it's because the last 3 games they finally played really good defense, giving up 12.3 points per game. So that's what did it for me. But here's the caveat, is that we were talking earlier, and you're going, well, tell me about each team's weakness. And I could give you a weakness for Ohio State, and I could give you a weakness for LSU. Yep. And I struggled to find a weakness for Clemson, right, other than who they did not play.
That's right.
You watch the way they play offense, the way they play defense, those dynamic playmakers on both sides of the ball, their defensive scheme, and you go, why not Clemson? Yeah. So shake them up and pull them out. And I mean, that's easy for me to say. I'm not the guy coaching one of those seeded teams.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it is what it is. I'm happy with it. I'm excited about it.
These are 3 of the best teams we've seen in the playoff era. And I think if you were to take each one of these 3 teams, all of them would probably be number 1 in the country. This all happened to happen in the same season. And that's, I think, what's so unique about this race that we have to the number 1 spot. I think the committee got it right. Based on the resume and the fact that we listened to Rob Mullins a couple weeks ago reference the concerns he had for LSU on the defensive side of the football. Mm-hmm. Those concerns have been put to bed. Mm-hmm. Based on how they played against Texas A&M, who's a pretty dang good football team, even though they're 7-5, pretty good football team with some explosive athletes, and then parlaying that into a dominant performance against the number 4 ranked team in the country. They have the superior resume, and I think they had to have essentially quieted all the naysayers about what they're doing on the defensive side of the football.
LSU had the toughest path, and I think they belong at number 1 because they did, and they were able all season long. I mean, Ohio State was great. They were great on both sides of the football, but when did they play a team, you know, in the first couple months where you said, well, that's a real big challenge? Same thing for Clemson. Clemson may be the best team. Ohio State may be the best team. But if you're going off resume and you look at the strength of record, it backs it up. I think LSU is very clear that they had the toughest path to get here, and they earned that number one seed, if you will.
Yeah, I think there's so many analytics and numbers you can look at. Coach alluded to a lot of them that you can make the case for either team.
Yep.
But G-Mac hit the nail on the head when he said, Rob Mullins came out and he gave us an equation. And his equation said LSU, sans or without defense, is the number 2 team in the nation, meaning if they add defense or start playing defense, they will become the number 1 team in the nation. LSU got that message loud and clear. They went and dominated Texas A&M, and everybody says A&M has 5 losses. Well, their 5 freaking losses were to Clemson, Auburn, Alabama,
Toughest
Georgia, and
schedule in the
LSU.
country.
5 losses that anybody would have taken. So I don't want to hear that A&M was just a garbage team. They went and dominated A&M, and then in a championship game, they dominated Georgia. To me, that says that LSU did what you asked.
Yeah, and I'm curious, too, when we talk about the playoff committee, how much were they looking at metrics? Early on, it was clear they were looking at the eye test. They were saying, look, Ohio State just looks better than everybody else. But I'm with you. It was clear they were almost waiting to see if the LSU defense was going to catch up with the LSU offense. And, in fact, in the past couple of weeks, it did. Now, earlier today, Reese Davis talked with the playoff committee chairman, Rob Mullins.
Rob, let's start at the top. LSU overtakes Ohio State. Why?
Well, I mean, you got 2 complete teams, obviously. They've both added a conference championship. And when we're comparing schedule strength, you've got LSU 4-0 against teams in the top 13, Ohio State 5-0 against teams in the top 21. It was really close. I mean, we've spent the entire ranking season, the 6 weeks of just, one going above the other, just by a tick. And this week we saw, or the last couple of weeks, we've seen an LSU defense healthy and playing better, continued quality play out of Joe Burrow at the quarterback position. And this week we just felt that LSU deserved that number 1 seed going into the playoff.
Okay, Rob, I'm not asking you to give me names, but last week Ohio State was number 1, and they had a solid victory too. How many voters on the committee changed their minds? Well, how different was the vote?
I don't get to see the exact vote, but, it was a similar debate that we've had every week. These teams have been extremely close. We've gone round and round each week, and we've shared that with you here on this show. But again, it's just one does something to move just above. One improves in an element to move just above. I think the key elements this week where the last couple of weeks we've seen an LSU defense that's healthy, playing solid, and you add to that an impressive win against a Georgia team that was our number 4 team last week, moved LSU that one last time just above Ohio State.
And on the subject of number 4, it seemed as if there was really no other choice at number 4. Is that the way it was in the room, that Oklahoma was sort of like the last team left standing?
Well, I mean, that conference championship and second win against Baylor moved them into the number 4 spot. We did spend some time talking about Oklahoma and Georgia, but in the end, it was a solid Oklahoma selection for the number 4 spot.
So Georgia was still in the picture even after the loss to LSU. They were still at least in the debate for a while for the number 4 spot. Was that perfunctory,
sure, we want to be
or was it actually a real debate?
Well, when we put them on the board, we want to be thorough. We want to make sure that we consider everything. So we did have Oklahoma and Georgia on the board, and Oklahoma was the number 4 team.
During any of the debates, the perception has been, and look, selection is not reflective of performance. Who knows how the teams are going to play once the semifinals come in 3 weeks. The perception right now is, though, that 1 versus 2 was a massive deal because number 2 is going to have to play Clemson. How was that addressed in the committee room during the discussions?
That's really not addressed. Our job is to rank the best teams. And as you've seen every week, and we've spent considerable time talking about these teams, and they've been very close. And we've been measuring them at a very detailed level. And when you look at it again, when we're looking at the protocol, they're both conference champions. They both have similar schedule strengths, so we're into a lot of other elements. And those elements are, we're talking about win against a number 5 or what was a number 4 Georgia team, a win against what was a number 8 Wisconsin team. You're evaluating offenses. Again, quality quarterback play, Joe Burrow, a difference maker, Chase Young, a difference maker. All those things are part of the conversation. And, it's been every week. And again, it's not somebody slipping back. It's somebody just doing something to move up above. And at the end, it was LSU number 1.
Just about to cross the top of the hour here. Our college football playoff selection show. The top 4 have been revealed. It's LSU number 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, Oklahoma 4. You have the matchups on the screen there. Pleased to be joined by Rob Mullins, who is the chair of the college football playoff selection committee. Rob, we haven't seen the rest of the top 25 rankings yet, but you've alluded to victories over ranked teams. When differentiating very narrow margins between the top two, between LSU and Ohio State, what emphasis is placed on that as opposed to some of the other metrics, whether it be strength of record, whether it be a SAGR and an FPI, a forward-looking measure? How would you describe just victories over teams that you guys wind up having ranked as opposed to some of the other mathematical-based, more objective measures?
Yeah, we're looking at full resumes. And when we're looking at those full resumes, obviously where teams are ranked pops off the screen at us. And that's why I mentioned schedule strength is a piece of that. And we know that LSU had 4 wins against teams that'll be in the top 13. Ohio State had 5 that'll be in the top 21. So we're comparing those very closely. It's an important element.
Okay, just out of curiosity, there is a component for the committee if they believe a team to be unequivocally better. Did Clemson get any support in the room to be number one just because, while they might not have the strength of schedule or the quality wins, that anyone in the room felt they were just unequivocally better than everybody else?
No, Clemson's been a part of this discussion. They've had a great year, undefeated, conference champions, and have been dominant. I mean, when you look what they've done the last 8 weeks, extremely impressive.